My sister-in-law would get so tired of just raising her children, she would show up at my house all sorts of hours of day and just drop her kids off, get into her car, and leave. The problem is, she wasn't even informing me that she was going to do this, she just did it. So one day, I wasn't home, and you can see how that would be a disaster. Hey everyone, I think the title is self-explanatory here, but I'm 36 and female and have a lot of background information to share with you, so this is going to be a long post. I just need to vent about the crazy thing that's just happened to me. To give some background information, let me tell you a little bit about myself and my wonderful husband, Fred. We live in a normal, quaint suburban life as a married couple in a decently clean neighborhood. I'm a nurse, and Fred is an engineering professor at the local college, so we make good money. Although I'm not saying that to brag. We've had to work hard for everything that we have, and I'm proud of both of us. However, I only wish that I could say the same thing about Fred's sister, my sister-in-law, Kelsey. And don't even get me started on her obnoxious husband, Melvin. These two have been a thorn in my side ever since me and Fred started dating, and I truly don't understand why Fred still puts up with Kelsey. He's always made excuses for her, and I understand to an extent. They grew up with an abusive parent and bonded over the trauma, but the two of them handled their trauma in radically different ways. Fred overcame his adversity and became a better person and a productive member of society. Kelsey, on the other hand, essentially did the opposite. She's addicted to drugs, irresponsible, childish, and immature, you name it. It probably describes Kelsey. When I and Fred first started dating, Kelsey would hit him up, and Fred asking for money, and I don't think I'd met this woman even 2 or 3 times before she asked me if she could borrow $10. Kelsey did not like me right away because I bluntly told her to get a job. Fred, on the other hand, does not have as much of a spine when it comes to his sister. He always enabled her and allowed her to keep screwing around, and she deserves some blame and needs to take responsibility. Of course, I've always felt this way about the way my husband treats his sister. On top of being a drug addict who could hardly keep a job longer than a week or 2, Kelsey decided it would be a great idea to have 2 kids from 2 different fathers. Don't get me wrong, Duke and Clark are the sweetest little cutie pies you could possibly ever imagine. They're great little boys, and I only wish that they had parents that they truly deserved. Fred was naive and thought having children would force Kelsey to finally grow up, but I knew that she would never change. It turns out I was right. From the beginning, Kelsey was always asking me and Fred to watch her kids. It didn't matter if we had a date planned or not. Fred would always drop everything to do her a favor, and I think Fred was worried about where the kids might end up if he did not just swallow his pride and watch them for the evening. Sometimes, one afternoon or one evening would turn into a few days where we would, be stuck watching Duke and Clark, unable to even get in contact with Kelsey. I assumed she was in some drug house somewhere doing drugs. I should point out, of course, that me and Fred were never reimbursed for the time and money that we invested in watching Duke and Clark, making sure that they were well-fed, well-clothed, and taken care of. Kelsey is so selfish that she never even offered to pay us gas money. Yeah, when we would sometimes have to drive her kids back to her place because she was too high or drunk to drive a car and pick up her own children. Don't get me wrong. Neither me nor Fred mind doing the occasional favor for our nephews, but we also expected Kelsey to eventually pick up some of the slack, and actually raise her kids. Things just got even worse when Kelsey once broke up with the supposed love of her life, Melvin. I guess I should believe Kelsey when she says Melvin is the love of her life, because these two are a match made in heaven. I think Melvin is the only man on the planet who is foul and irresponsible as Kelsey is. For one, it was bad enough that Melvin was who Kelsey picked to begin with. Melvin used to bully Fred back in school, pulling cruel pranks on him like farting in his face and giving him wedgies. In fact, the first time the 4 of us all met up to have dinner together, the first thing Melvin mentioned to Fred was, and I quote, "Hey, aren't you that dork I used to beat up in school?" Yeah, I could tell Fred was embarrassed by that, and Melvin was just gloating about how he got to hook up with Fred's little sister, which I felt was quite inappropriate to bring up at a public dinner. Kelsey just giggled like a child. Melvin does not work often or contribute much to society, and he also loves all the same drugs that Kelsey does. It scares me and Fred that these two are responsible for raising Duke and Clark. Kelsey continued to ask us for money and favors even after marrying Melvin. I would ask her, why can't Melvin help you? And her excuse was being that Melvin was experiencing a slow season. Yeah, that's right, it's a slow season. You see, Melvin describes himself as a professional juggler. He's quite good at juggling, but you can't make money to feed your children as a juggler. He sometimes gets hired for children's parties where he dresses up like a clown and juggles for the children, but he will immediately spend the money on drugs and alcohol, fancy stereos, and all sorts of other frivolous items. Now that I've painted a picture of the type of horrid and wretched personalities me and my husband have been dealing with for so long, I want to cut right to the chase and get into the event that prompted me to write this post for all you tonight. I'm still reeling from what happened, and most of all, I'm worried sick about Duke and Clark. Allow me to explain, as I've mentioned earlier, that me and Fred work hard and work often for the nice things that we have in life. We don't get a lot of time off, and when we do get time off, it's often eaten up by some drama involving Kelsey, or we end up forced to watch Duke and Clark while Kelsey and Melvin get high. Well, me and Fred's favorite band of all time is the rock band Korn. We're huge Korn fans and finally got tickets to see them live. We cleared our schedule and got time off work, and we told everybody we knew weeks and weeks in advance, multiple times, not to need us tonight or ask us to do anything because we're going to be busy at the Korn concert. Me and Fred both made sure to let Kelsey know many times that we would be at the Korn concert, so don't even consider trying to pawn off your children on us and force us to miss out on seeing our favorite band Korn. The evening seemed to be going as planned, and we put on Korn outfits and went to the show. It was great, me and Fred had a fantastic time, but what we came home to was horrible and ruined the entire evening for us. Me and Fred came home and pulled into our driveway, where we were greeted by a sea of flashing blue lights. We were scared. What the heck happened while we were at the Korn concert? These cops explained things to us, and at first they were accusatory and angry with me and Fred. They were threatening to arrest us both for child endangerment and all sorts of stuff. Apparently, while me and Fred were gone at the Korn concert, Kelsey must have conveniently forgotten that we would be attending the show, and were therefore unavailable for anything close to babysitting duties for some time. More likely, she got high and just didn't care. She dropped off Duke and Clark and went back to her place to party. She came back looking for Duke and Clark, and since me and Fred were at the concert, our house was totally locked up, so the two boys had no way to get inside. Apparently, they wandered off while me and Fred were at the show. When Kelsey came back and discovered the two of them missing, she did the right thing by calling emergency. The major problem, she tried to tell the police that this was all my fault and Fred's. Well, that's right. The despicable snake stooped even lower than I thought a despicable snake could stoop. She had some sob story for the police about how she had trusted me and Fred to watch Duke and Clark for her, quote, first day off in forever. Despite the gravity of the situation, I had to chuckle audibly when the police gave us this information. It was so typical of Kelsey to just twist and distort the truth to make herself look like the victim. In a situation where she abandoned her children at night so she could run off and do drugs with a juggling clown named Melvin. Me and Fred were furious with all the junk cops were spilling at us. We raised a serious hell and told the cops the truth about what a dirty person Kelsey was. We explained that we watched Duke and Clark all the time and finally managed to get our schedules cleared so we could attend a concert to see our favorite band, Korn. We told the cops the truth about Kelsey being an irresponsible drug addict. They soon checked her for signs of impairment and found that she was under the influence right at that moment. And the cops arrested her and charged her with child endangerment, child abuse, and even driving under the influence charge for having driven drunk over to our house. Kelsey was shouting, cursing, and even vowing to get even with me and Fred as the cops hauled her away. She's so selfish, she did not even think to mention her kids once when she realized she was being held responsible for this mistake. Fred also made sure to give Kelsey an earful, and I was shocked to see him give her a piece of his mind for once. While it was nice that the police recognized what happened and decided to arrest Kelsey, that still does not solve the fact that Duke and Clark are still missing. And Fred can't even bask in the joy of having just seen our favorite band. Kelsey's in jail and doesn't have to deal with it. Of course, me and Fred have not even been able to sleep a wink since all this happened because we've been busy circling the neighborhood looking for the missing boys. Anyways, I just had to come on here and vent about this. I'm scared, and I just want to find Duke and Clark. Update number 1. Hello everyone, OP here. First, I'd like to thank you all who have left good advice and supportive comments so far. It's nice to feel like I'm not crazy, and I'm glad everyone sees how foul Kelsey is. Luckily, right now, as I type this, Kelsey's still sitting in a jail cell where she can't get her hands on drugs or hurt her kids anymore. Hopefully, she's sober and has to reflect on her actions for once in her pathetic life. However, I wish I could say that this situation's been resolved and the whole ordeal is over and gone, but that could not be further from the truth. It's the day since Duke and Clark were reported missing, and there still is not a trace of either of them. It's crazy how far 2 kids so young can get. I mean, I'm worried sick about them, and just hoping that we'll find some trace of them eventually. Of course, me and Fred are left dealing with the fallout of all this while Kelsey's in jail. I have to tell you about something ridiculous that happened today. So, I guess Melvin figured out when Kelsey did not return home with the kids last night that something had gone awry at some point. Well, Melvin showed up at my house this afternoon and he was furious. Apparently, he's been astute enough to see that Kelsey has been arrested over the night. He called the jail and found out what happened, or at least Kelsey's version of what went down. You would think Melvin would be furious at Kelsey for getting this whole mess started, but no, he blamed me and Fred. He came onto our property and began shouting and threatening and cursing, and we told him that we're trying to find Duke and Clark, and if that he wasn't willing to help us, he just needs to get the heck off our property right now. All Melvin said was that he was going to, quote, get even with us for getting Kelsey thrown in jail. Clearly, the health and well-being of Duke and Clark weren't even remotely on Melvin's mind. Update number 2. Hey everyone, OP's here for yet another update. Again, thanks to everybody who's been commenting and just showing support for the struggles I'm undergoing. Some of you were even so kind as to offer to come down to where we live and help look for Clark and Duke, so I appreciate that, but I'm updating this post today just to tell you all great news. Clark and Duke were found lost in the woods, quite some distance away from the house. They were both tired, cold, hungry, and we finally found them. It was just the 2 of us and some police-led search dogs. The dogs were finally able to pick up a scent, and we had to go deep into the forest, far away from any sort of markings or trails, but eventually, we found Clark and Duke sitting next to each other in a cave. They looked scared, but they were so excited to see me and Fred, and we hugged them. They asked where their mommy was, and we did not want to tell them that Kelsey was currently sitting in jail without even a single concern for their well-being, so we just said that Kelsey was busy with a trip and we would see her later. Much to my surprise, Duke actually said that he did not want to see his mother, no matter where she was. Wow, kids are smart and more receptive than adults often realize. He's only 8 years of age, but he's fully aware that his mother abandoned him and his little brother. The 2 of them explained to us that they have gotten hungry and wandered off trying to find a highway with a restaurant so they could ask somebody for some food. Yes, it was heartbreaking to hear them explain it. Unfortunately, the police called Melvin, as he was currently the legal guardian of Duke and Clark. Despite me and Fred's protest, Melvin drove to our house and picked up Duke and Clark. He even flipped us off as he drove away. I could see how sad Duke and Clark both looked as they were taken back to the drug-infested apartment that they lived in. Now, after seeing the looks on Duke and Clark's face as they were driving away by Melvin back into the drug den of neglect and despair, me and Fred had a serious talk that evening, and while we were happy Duke and Clark had been found, of course, the fact that the two boys were being put right back into the hands of one of the people who's responsible for this whole mess in the first place meant that these types of things were only going to keep occurring. That is unless me and Fred stepped up and decided to step in and do something about this. Me and Fred are looking into possible avenues for gaining custody of Duke and Clark, and while we understand adopting even one child is an enormous responsibility, me and Fred truly believe that we're in the right place emotionally, mentally, and financially to provide Duke and Clark with the type of attention and care they rightfully deserve. It's a drastic move to make sure, but we've begun searching for a lawyer who can help us with the steps in the right direction, as well as making the appropriate calls to CPS services. There's no way CPS won't find me and Fred to be more effective and stable parental candidates for two young boys. Anyways, I'll keep you guys updated as I find out more. Update number 3. Oh my gosh, I have another update. I wish I did not have to keep writing these, but things just keep getting crazier, and I feel obliged to let you know. I knew things would not just simmer down and go back to normal just because Duke and Clark had been found safe and alive, or at least Kelsey and Melvin's warped little idea of what normal parenting is. First, before I get into the craziness that just transpired, I'd like to let you all know that me and Fred have been busy exploring and researching the adoption process. We've been keeping this on the down low, so to speak, because we knew Kelsey and Melvin would obviously freak out if they knew me, and Fred had plans to try to put Duke and Clark into a stable, safe home. Well, things took for a very bad turn today. Melvin's parents gathered up enough bail money to get Kelsey out of jail. She's been sitting sober in a cell for the past week, and Fred's also just been busy cleaning up her mess, and she ends up getting bailed out without even having to spend a dime of her own money. Yeah, typical Kelsey. Well, when Kelsey returned home from jail, apparently she began partying extra hard, doing a lot of drugs while, just to celebrate with Melvin. Things got out of hand quite quickly, and Duke and Clark were both so scared they decided to leave the house and walk all the way over to where me and Fred lived. Okay, the reason I know this, the two of them actually made it all the way over here by themselves and told us. I told them both I would have given them a ride if they managed to call me, and they told me that they wanted to move in with me and Fred, since their parents could not take care of them. It was so sad that two kids were so young and innocent were being forced to deal with all this crap. They should be outside playing without a care in the world, but instead, they were trying to escape their own parents because they knew their parents were drug addicts. Well, after me and Fred made sure Duke and Clark had eaten some food and gotten some candy and ice cream as a treat for all the drama that they'd been dealing with, we began to hear a loud banging on the door. We could see Melvin's trashy beat-up car sitting in our driveway, and Kelsey and Melvin immediately began screaming, threatening to call the police because we had, in their words, kidnapped their kids, and Fred could not believe the ridiculousness of this. We told them that Duke and Clark were safe inside and that they'd come to our house on their own accord. Well, Kelsey and Melvin did not take this answer. I could tell that they were both on some drugs, and they started smashing up our property, hitting our cars, stomping our gardens, and anything that they could honestly think of. It was quite a pathetic temper tantrum, and I made sure Duke and Clark were not present while this sad display took place. Fred called the police, and the same cops who had just been at our house only a week before came again. They knew exactly what to do and arrested Kelsey and Melvin as the two of them begged, pleaded, and actually screamed and cursed. They did not stop there and accused the cop of favoring us for money. And Melvin even threatened to beat up one of the police officers when he came out. Right now, the cops took them to the police station, and I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Update number 5. Hello everyone, I'm back for what'll be my final update. Once again, I'd just like to thank everybody who left kind and supportive comments. I could not have made it through this ordeal without your help and support. I know it's been a while since my last update, but I've been horribly busy lately. Since people kept commenting and asking how things turned out, I figured I'd wrap everything up for you. Once Kelsey and Melvin went back to jail, a lengthy court case ensued, and I stayed off social media, honestly, because our lawyer advised us not to share any details online. CPS got involved, and it was a big ordeal, but the important thing is the judge granted me and Fred full custody of Duke and Clark. The two boys have been adopted as our own. Since then, me and Fred have just been back to living our quiet domestic lives. It can be stressful to have two young children to raise because they can be quite a handful. Me and Fred cut them some slack because this is the first time in their lives that they've been allowed to truly be kids and not have to worry about where they're going to eat or sleep. Kelsey and Melvin are far away in jail, where they can't hurt anyone. They're going to be gone for quite some time, thinking about what they've done. They have no idea what they squandered the opportunity to see these beautiful children grow. Clark sometimes asks about his mom and dad, and we have to lie about it for the time being since I don't know how to inform him and to deal with the issue. He's too young to understand, honestly, whereas Duke has matured above his years. He's taking excellent care of his younger brother, which helps us a lot. I believe maturity comes with responsibilities, not age. Otherwise, those two fools don't act like teenagers and endanger their kids' lives. I think the best news of this entire story is that OP and Fred, they were able to get their hands on Clark and Duke. I do want to know your thoughts about that, how the entire family handled this situation, from the point where the kids went missing, to all of this building up to the fact that, hey, maybe if they would have just cut off this toxicness out of their life, it never would have escalated to this point. But at the end of the day, it all works out because the kids are being taken care of. I want to know your thoughts about this story, so if you want to drop your comments down below in the comment section, let's go ahead and have a discussion. My name's Mr. Reddito. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you guys have a fantastic one. I'll see you tomorrow for another story, and just remember, it's cool to be kind. Peace.